Hello everyone, today is Friday the 9th of December 2016. I am Chris Ellis and I'm here to talk about today Bitcoin in Botswana, in particular this lady Alakanani from Gaborone, the capital of Botswana. She recently staged very successfully a conference in Botswana which attracted people from all over the world, I'm told including Japan, America, Kenya and South Africa. She's posted up some pictures on the internet to show us what it was like. And it's all in aid of basically having this, which is the humble beginnings of Satoshi Centre. You may remember back in the day, we were raising money for the, I'm sorry, let me get these in order, raising money for the Fullnode. And the Fullnode, one of the ideas behind it was that we were going to send these Fullnodes to parts of the world that were disenfranchised and needed better connectivity, not just to Bitcoin, but also to the internet in general. And one of the benefactors of that was Alakanani in Botswana. She got 2 of these nodes with the view to helping to educate people about how to get access to the blockchain. But importantly, what the Fullnode enabled you to do was enabled you to start coding on the blockchain. So rather than people being passive recipients using these light wallets and just, using Bitcoin for what we all know and love, spending it and transmitting money around the world, global settlement finality, you could actually encourage a culture of entrepreneurialism and tech entrepreneurialism in places like Gaborone itself, with the aid of her friends. Some of these people I understand have degrees in information technology, IT degrees, and really we don't want that capital, that human capital, to go to waste. We want these people to be tooled up. We can, of course, teach them over the airwaves coming at you right now on YouTube, and we can bring these people to the table. So Alakanani can't be with us right now. We were hoping to get her. She's free to drop in when she can. She is still using the internet connection that you funded for her nearly a year ago. It's still working. Obviously, when it comes to video and all of these things, it can be a little bit intermittent, so we have to be a bit forgiving. And coming next, for her next trick, she has a conference coming up in Kenya, the Koala Bitcoin Conference. I hope I'm getting that right, which features some pretty prominent figures in the space. I believe that Wonderboy Vitalik will be there as well, and this will be in Nairobi in Kenya. So I believe that she's going to be there, and I look forward to hearing about that. But before we sort of go into that, I'd rather Alakanani speak about that in her own words, and I'll certainly take any questions from the audience. I'd also like to basically start by introducing the people that have joined us here today. I am joined by Tone Vase.
Hey Chris, glad you're back on and doing podcasts. Happy to join you a little bit, maybe throw in my 2 cents here and there.
Yeah, for sure. And also Mad Bitcoins.
I just clicked on a link and now I'm here.
Easy as that. And I'm also joined by Janine Roma. Janine, say hi.
Hello.
Hello. A couple of things that we're going to talk about today really is, the benefits of using a Fullnode. I think in the green room before we came on air, Tone was asking about what are the relative benefits. Over the weekend, we had a talk by Andreas Antonopoulos here in London. I had the privilege of being there to see it. And also, I think Pamela Morgan spoke about the DAM project, which is using smart contracts and arbitration in law. And we also got to meet Airbits as well, and looking at some of the innovations they're bringing in. So talking about the virtues of why, the Fullnode and building it for people like Alakanani, and we've also got some colleagues in Ghana and Sierra Leone as well, as South America. The reason why it's important, as I said, is that it doesn't just cultivate this kind of passive consumer culture of Bitcoin, where there are these kind of core developers who are like the overlords of the project, who just kind of push features and updates onto people. I think Bitcoin Core has been emphasizing the fact that they don't own Bitcoin as much as people might interpret it that way. They can put forward recommendations, they can put forward suggestions, but they can't put forward hard roadmaps. What Bitcoin really requires is much more bilateral conversation between developers and what I like to think as power users. Bitcoin needs more power users, people that don't just use the network, but actually contribute to the network itself. And you can only do that if you are running the full implementation of Bitcoin itself. And what that really means is that not only are you relaying transactions, a lot of people, I think, kind of get muddled up with a full node and the benefits of it. So I think some people kind of think like, oh, so it like benefits the network because you're relaying transactions. Really, the net benefit to the network for relaying transactions across the network is a diminishing return. We've got more than enough nodes on the network that can relay transactions at the moment. So that's not really the major benefit. The major benefit is that education is decentralization. When you educate someone, you're giving up the need for control over that information. You're giving them knowledge and something that they can use to become more self-reliant and more independent as a human being. They can take that full node, they can build their own applications on it, which will eventually lead to them coming up to the edges of the protocol, to them raising issues on the Bitcoin GitHub section, where they can actually start to converse with the developers and talk about the issues that they're having, and whether that's scaling or whether it's usability or whether it's something to do with the built-in JSON RPC, the API that the Bitcoin client comes with. And that's really the kind of the culture I'm trying to foster. And in addition to that, you know, you saw the laptop that we built, but in addition to the laptop, I've also been working on getting the full node to work on, you know, with things like the solar panel. And also at the moment, I'm working with David Bailey at Hard BTC to build like a full kind of a full stack offline operating system so that you could run a Bitcoin node on one of these with the network adapter and the USB ports ripped out, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth. It is fully air-gapped, running a Bitcoin node that allows you to sign transactions, either with a Bitcoin address, maybe on a PGP address, and then extracts that signed message without exposing the private keys to the network onto, say, a mobile device, which can then relay the transaction for you, which would give you full ring-fenced security. So that's the kind of goal, you know, that I'm going for. And then not to sort of capture this or to patent it or to stop anyone else from innovating it, but to open source the schematics and the plans that go into it so that anybody else who's willing and has the drive and the motivation can come along and add to it and improve it. So Tone, what were the questions that you had? Or maybe I've answered them already in that.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I am. So did you have any questions
okay.
about the full node? Because we were talking about this earlier, so I just wanted to know if you wanted to put them on air.
Yeah, no. I was, because I'm not, again, I joined Bitcoin in early 2013. By the way, does it surprise you coming out of the woodworks that they were in Bitcoin since 2010?
Who was in Bitcoin in 2010?
Apparently everyone. Well, like every day I'm seeing more people claim that they've been in Bitcoin since 2010.
Right.
Has been noticing this, or is this like what's actually happening?
I think a lot. I've heard a lot of people who claim that they've been into Bitcoin since 2010 or 11. Usually they like to hedge a little bit, so it doesn't sound too. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's true. Some people. I mean, I knew about it in 2012, I think, but I didn't get into it properly until 2013. So I consider myself a 2013 Bitcoiner.
Right. So do I. I didn't get into
the worst part is I once mentioned it on my blog. I was like, it's not like they're asking you to pay in some obscure currency method like Bitcoin. And yeah, you know, I don't have anything to show for that except a horrible old mention. But
what year was that?
I'm probably 11 or 12. I'll go look it up. I was mad about scalping Burning Man tickets. I was all on the warpath.
No, I heard about it in very early 2011 when the WikiLeaks thing started. But I consider myself a 2013 Bitcoiner because that's when I actually made the effort, went out and bought my first one, even though I've been paying attention to it since very early 2011. So I don't like fault myself. I had no reason to buy it back then. It just didn't seem like a good investment at the time. It just I didn't know if it was going to be sustainable or not. Anyway. So I got in at a time where I was at least smart enough not to attempt mining. So I probably saved myself a bunch of money. So I'm still, and I don't program anymore. So that was my main thing is what is the advantage of buying the Bitcoin full node? And so far, for me at least, as someone that is conscious, it would be great to knowing where all of my transactions are pinging from. I did buy a Bitcoin full node, or even chipped in on one with a few friends of mine. We can all just directly ping our Bitcoin transactions off of a trusted source. But I'm still what happens after. The network still sees it afterwards, but the first node is at least trusted, or it kind of just stays there until they're cleared. So I'm still a little, I would love to know a little more detail on the privacy that it offers, and how VPN factors into it. Would you be installing the VPN on it? And one more question, that Bitcoin full node, like for example, I have a laptop. Always home, I take the laptop with me. So what happens? Does this thing get plugged into the wall independently, and it just sits in another corner of my house, connected to the internet, all connected to the internet, and I just ping off of it no matter where I am? Or does it need to be like, do I have to have it online with my laptop? Like, how would all that work?
Right. So yeah, there are certain, in addition to the development benefits that I just mentioned and self-reliance, there are also financial privacy benefits to using your own full node. And this really harkens back to the architecture of the internet itself. We're still using, the internet itself was a form of decentralization, but we're still using the hub and spoke model of these kind of big cloud servers like Amazon Web Services and the Microsoft implementation, their version of that's the Azure. And the problem is that the way the internet has kind of grown, particularly across the West in Europe and North America, is that the download speeds are significantly faster than the upload speeds, right? It's asymmetric. And the reason for that is that they don't want you to be too productive on the internet. They want you to consume. They're just a little bit worried about when you start producing, when you start putting data up, uploading the data. So there are special internet connections for people that want to serve information upstream to the internet, and normally you're encouraged to do those in data centers. But data centers are very centralized by very nature. They exist, you know, and are dependent upon a state for existence. They take up a lot of real estate. They require round-the-clock support and security and you know, ventilation and so forth. Whereas a peer-to-peer model like Bitcoin is much more distributed, right? Not necessarily decentralized, but it's distributed, which means that the nodes are really, you know, really just as powerful as one another, and they're using an ordinary internet connection to communicate. One of the things that happens when you broadcast your transaction, once your private key has signed the transaction that you want to send to the network, it will broadcast that signed message. There is nothing that the broadcasting node can do to that message once it's been signed with your private key to alter the content of that message, i.e., you know, change the address that it's going to. All it can do is broadcast it or not broadcast it. As we saw with the hard fork with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, we saw a relay attack where people's broadcast transactions were being relayed on Classic at the same time as on the legacy fork of Ethereum, or sorry, I should say the official Ethereum hard fork that all the exchanges were complying with. And what this meant was that users were faced with the prospect that they were having their coins spent twice on a network without them necessarily knowing about it, just because a couple of the nodes on the network decided to be mischievous and simply rebroadcast the signed transaction on both networks at the same time, which meant that if you sent the coins over to an exchange, you also sent your ETC or Ethereum Classic coins over to them as well. And now you have to call them and say, look, you know, you've got this private key, it's on this other network. Could you upload, you know, the Ethereum Classic software so that I can kind of, you know, claim those coins, please? So the reason it's important is that when you broadcast a transaction on the Bitcoin network, the node that listens to you first, that gets it first, also knows your IP address, which also means that they now have a way of correlating the public key to your IP address, which in theory can be used to identify you in some way. Okay, it's not privacy preserving in that sense. And as a result, we might want to employ certain features like using Tor, because now Bitcoin Core comes as standard with Tor implementation, so that it routes the connections over Tor. But you can also use VPNs, virtual private networks, which are commercial services, where you can route your full node through another server, so that it appears on the network as coming from somewhere else. Now, this attack vector really only matters. I mean, it's not going to matter if just some hobbyist, running a Bitcoin full node somewhere, just rebroadcast your transactions. But what if a large company were to start putting lots and lots of full nodes all over the world in data centers, and then persisting and keeping all of that data in a log file, a giant log file? What if they started, a big lookup table of all the IP addresses with all the Bitcoin addresses, and tried to kind of correlate and triangulate using graph theory who those Bitcoin addresses belong to, or at least an approximation of where they came from? That's why I think it's important, like I say, education is decentralization, that when we give people that information and we tell them that maybe you want to use Mycelium Wallet, but you can also configure Mycelium Wallet to route the transactions through your own full node. Now, it could be a laptop, like you say, Tone, that you have set up in your house, and you can set it up so that it has a public IP address. You can contact your internet service provider, and you can ask them for a fixed IP. That's convenient. There are also other software that you can get online that can give you an effective fixed IP address without you needing to contact your IP address. We'll go into that in another show. And what that means is that when you're out shopping, or when you're spending money with your Mycelium wallet, you can basically broadcast your own transactions rather than using the Mycelium API, which means that you don't have to worry about whether or not Mycelium are logging or keeping or persisting any of the data from the IP address to the Bitcoin address. So that is essentially what it means. It's not just a service you're providing to the network, although that's important too. I mean, I should mention also, actually, the more nodes we have on the network and the more experts we have running those nodes, the harder it will be in the future for an attacker to DDoS the Bitcoin network, because the more people will be skilled up and ready to deploy new full nodes in that event. So if we do face a future where the number of full nodes drops off precipitously, we at least have an educated populace that can respond to that attack vector quickly. It's an outside chance, and obviously the pedants and the smart people out there will say that will probably never happen. I never say never. It is a possibility, and I would prefer it if we'd had more educated people in Bitcoin, because to feel is to understand. Once you touch something, you feel it, you get it, you can start to play around with it, and actually find that it's pretty fun.
Let me ask you one quick follow-up. So would the opposite be possible, right? So I have my own Bitcoin full node, and I'm bouncing all of my Bitcoin transactions to that node. So can a spy kind of attacker literally zoom in on my node and then keep an eye on all the transactions that are coming out of my node, because he would know that they're all mine, or he will know that they're all someone's, and then dig in on who that someone is afterwards?
Yes, that is possible. So one of the risks of running a full node is first of all, you're open to DDoS, right? Because somebody can see that you're running the port on 8333, and they can essentially start DDoSing you. And I've had somebody already hack into one of my Raspberry Pi full nodes. It was an IP address stemming from Russia, although I don't really know. We don't know whether it really came from Russia. All we know is the IP address originated. And all the person did was he logged in using the standard login for Raspberry Pi. He looked around the directories, and then he just quit the SSH connection. That was fine. So that is one of the risks that you do take. And it's one of the reasons why you probably want to be changing your IP address regularly and rebooting the full node. You can actually write a script on the full node just to reboot it every 3 days or something, and that might help as well with some of the memory issues. So yes, it is possible that they can keep an eye. You do have blacklisting and whitelisting within Bitcoin Core, i.e. nodes that play well and play nice with one another, you will tend to favor more on the list of node connections that you have. When you set the max connection parameter in the Bitcoin conf file, you can actually limit that to a small number of nodes, which means that you will tend to reject connections from anyone who may have been acting maliciously in the past. So that's basically how it works. I also think Greg Maxwell has published, I don't have it to hand, but he has published a list of IP addresses that have been seen to be acting nefariously.
Chris, I'm not sure you fully answered my question. Sure. Because, and again, I know we want to move on, but I'm somewhat of a noob when it comes to this stuff, right? I mean, economics and other stuff are more my specialty. So I understand that because the Bitcoin full node needs an internet connection, so the Bitcoin full node will be connected through an IP address that can then switch through a VPN. But does the node itself identifying mark outside of the IP address, where someone can literally zoom in on the node regardless of what IP it's using to connect to the internet?
Not if you're using
the node.
No, not if you're using the standard setup. There are ways of differentiating yourself. You can communicate, like you can give yourself a custom name on the network, which of course is informational and someone could use that. But if you're using it out of the box and you're resetting it regularly and you're changing up your IP address, or better still, just using it through Tor, frankly. I mean, that's what Luke Jr. recommends, is that everybody just uses it through Tor, and then you don't even have to buy a VPN. It just works out of the box. Because that way people can't, like you say, nail you down. They can't get a fixed, idea of like who you are. They can't zoom in on you, so to speak.
Okay.
So that's that. So Janine is saying that there is a comment on the YouTube comment section. Careful with the "they" in quotes. It's easy to start your own ISP, and many ISPs offer symmetrical connections as standard. Yeah, that is true, and we need more awareness about that. You can, of course, just buy your own virtual private server and set up your own VPN if you want to. There's really nothing stopping you from doing that. And if you are clued up enough to do so, you should and give it a try. I don't know how expensive that is. I mean, you might be able to do it on DigitalOcean, or you probably want to don't use DigitalOcean. They're far too commercial. But use somebody who's a bit more indie. Molvad VPN, NordVPN. These are all good. I hear very good things about them. PureVPN is more of a commercial VPN provider. It's used a lot by people who want to get access to, the American version of a particular streaming service, for example, or the American version of YouTube, so they can watch content that isn't used in their country. But maybe for Bitcoin, you want to go that extra mile and use somebody that's more privacy conscious. Certainly a VPN provider that gives a robust claim and has been around long enough, who claims that they don't keep log files. That's kind of one of the most important things you're looking for in a VPN provider. So those are the VPN providers. So there's NordVPN, NORD-VPN. There's Molvad, MULLVAD. They even accept cash. So they accept Bitcoin and they accept cash in envelopes. They're based in Germany, Molvad. And PureVPN as well, which are the more commercial version. And PureVPN also take Bitcoin as well. So you can pay using Bitcoin, maybe send the Bitcoin from an exchange or mix it on an exchange and then send it. Maybe use Tor to sign up so that they don't have an IP address. And then that way, even the VPN provider has no way of getting back to who you are. I mean, I guess they do, because you're going to be logging in through an IP address, right? But security is a compromise. You have to balance security and convenience. So that would be how you do it. Any other points on this issue before we move on to the poll that we did on World Crypto Network recently?
I do have an update on my early and embarrassing first mention of Bitcoin. If you go back to 2012 in the month of March on good old thomashunt.com, here I am complaining about StubHub selling Burning Man tickets. And here, sarcastically, I mention, as for StubHub's romantic dream of being an Adam Smithian marketplace, I don't believe that they operate their servers offshore from the free island of Sealand, trading tickets only via BitTorrent, existing only via rumor, and accepting only Bitcoin. So there it is. Very embarrassing.
Excellent. Well, you weren't to know at the time. You're forgiven.
I knew about it. I read the Slashdot post when it came out. I told my roommate, I'm like, I think it's so cool. And he's a computer programmer, supposed to know more than me. And he's like, I don't think it's that cool. And I kind of just put it in the back of my head for a few years. And then it went to 250 and everyone was rich except me. But there's apparently a lot more of these people from 2010 popping up and they're not rich. What were they doing with their time?
Hey, Tom. I know. Hey, Thomas, speaking of listening to a computer programmer, when I was back in undergrad, I think like a sophomore in undergrad or something, it was a long time ago, it was still like in the 90s, like slowly going into late 90s. Email was just becoming, like popular on campuses. And I got into a big argument with a computer science major because he didn't understand why I wasn't interested in buying a laptop and I still had a desktop. And my answer to him was, why would I have a laptop if there's no wireless internet? And the guy said, there will never be wireless internet. It's too much data to be traveling without a wire. So we should always listen to computer science majors.
Well, and it's also funny because a lot of the times it's people who have too much information that can't make a good decision. A friend of mine was saying recently, everyone knows Ethereum went from $1 to $20 and it had this big run up. Well, he didn't buy any because he knew the Ethereum team. He knew how close they were to total disaster, how the foundation was out of money. There was a variety of really bad news until something changed and the whole market went right up. But yeah, it's crazy. Too much information could take you down just as well as too little.
Yeah, I think right. Just quickly on the whole Ethereum thing, I think that the price is now coming to people. The market is basically demanding real delivery, and I think that the team at Ethereum really needs to humble down now. And yes, it's spiked up off its bottom, but I think it's going to be like the next, it's going to be like Litecoin in terms of price for the next year or two. Got Metropolis that's scheduled to come out, the new release of Ethereum scheduled to come out in Q1 of 2017. So if we translate that from developer speak into real speak, that's more like Q3 of 2017. So I think, tough times ahead for Ethereum in terms of the people holding the currency. But I do genuinely, sincerely hope that Ethereum does better once it's out of the spotlight. There have been at least one person I know of that's left the Ethereum Foundation because they were upset that their reputation had been damaged by what happened with the DAO. I hope they take this as a teachable moment and that they are able to clear that up because it was a bold idea to be sure, but I don't want to see anybody fail that isn't overtly committing a scam. I don't want to get into that argument with Tone right now because I know that Tone does think it's that maybe that there's a bit more scammy.
And Ethereum Classic's still out there,
yeah,
still going strong.
Exactly, Ethereum Classic is still doing strong. It's holding up these price levels. We've also seen that Ethereum itself has been in positive correlation with Bitcoin over the last few days. So even as Bitcoin has been going up, Ethereum has been going up and vice versa. So that's a very interesting, it's almost as if Ethereum is now subservient to Bitcoin. We've also noticed on the markets that the Bitcoin is responding more to market opens and closes. So like the New York Open, which happens at 14:30 UTC, 2:30 London time, basically. We've noticed that in the lead up, Bitcoin will act just like the pre-markets do in stocks, and just like the S&P acts at half an hour before the market opens. There is a little bit of a rush to price. And why is that? Well, that's because probably, I speculate, there's a lot of bot trading. And what bots often do is they accelerate price movement towards the end of a candle close, like an hourly close or a 4-hour close or a daily close, because those are psychological timeframes that most of the speculators and traders are going to look at as a signal to either enter or to enter a trade. And what they do is towards the end of that, as that candle is about to close in the last few seconds of that minute candle, the 15-minute candle, or any of those popular timeframes, an accelerated price action will occur. And that's what we're starting to see in Bitcoin, especially with the daily close in UTC. So that's 0 hours UTC, and also the close in China, which I believe is 1600 UTC. So we're starting to see that happen. And that's really about manipulating, is this daily candle going to be green? Is this daily candle going to be red? And what does that mean for the long-term investors? And that's not happening on Ethereum, which tells me that there's more institutional buying happening in Bitcoin, and Ethereum is now subservient to Bitcoin in terms of, it will follow its lead to some extent. If Bitcoin rallies in the next few days, I would expect Ethereum to go down. But if Bitcoin continues to grind up in a steady fashion, I would expect Ethereum to follow for now, as the market starts to demand and expect. I think also what's happening, if you look at the books on Poloniex on Ethereum, what we're seeing is a thickening of the buy side. So we're starting to see more bids come in. Be careful if you're thinking of buying Ethereum right now, because this could be a tactic by market makers to thicken the buy side so that they can sell into those orders later on. So just be careful. Look at the sell-off we had. Look at the volume on that sell-off. If you think that was the final capitulation, go ahead. I would urge you to question whether or not that was the final capitulation. I think the final capitulation is yet to come. We could go down a little bit further. But anyway, that's not financial advice. That was for entertainment purposes only.
Very quickly. I will take the other side of that trade. And the reason is because unlike early 2015, I don't see current environment of Bitcoin lifting all the boats. In 2015, where it was like a new frontier for all these new coins, and Bitcoin going up was good for the overall crypto market, I think this time around, or realization that everyone is just using all these other coins for speculation. And if Bitcoin really starts to go up, I see people are giving that up and getting on the bandwagon this time around. So I don't see the tide lifting all the boats. I see the Bitcoin boat pulling away if Bitcoin starts to go up. Now, on the other hand, if Bitcoin starts to go down because of more scaling debates, then these altcoins could hang around longer. That's my view, general.
Okay, great. So moving on then to our next topic, which is what you want to see more of on the show, on this channel. And this was an idea that Charlene put forward. Let's just bring up the poll. The pollsters got it wrong. They were predicting something quite different, I'm sure. But no recount is necessary because the overwhelming winner was encryption tools. You want to learn more about the types of tools that you can use to secure your communications. This comes really on the backdrop of the IP bill here in the UK that Ed Snowden tweeted about earlier, which basically says that if you're running a CSP or a communication service provider in the UK, you have to kind of give the government prior notice so that maybe they can put in some backdoors into that software, right? And this was kind of worrying, and Zach Whitaker kind of pointed out that, the IP bill also prevents companies from doing an Apple and quietly sliding in encryption. Any company with the UK operations are also affected, so that's most of Silicon Valley. And essentially, that this should give us cause for concern. So really, the IP bill doesn't say anything about education over the internet. So as far as I'm aware, we're not committing any offense by teaching you the best tools to use. That's something that I think Charlene wants to talk a little bit about, not least because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I want people to kind of feel secure. So, Charlene, if you've got anything ready, you can show us the crypto kitties, because I think one of the things that was suggested by Block Talk was that we need to have 24-hour live streams of kittens and puppies playing. There simply isn't enough cats in Bitcoin. And so we very much took that to heart. We did ask for your feedback. You gave it to us. So Janine, are you ready? Have you got anything you can show us you've been working on?
Yeah, so as you just said, we recently did that Twitter poll and the winning choice was encryption tools. And I had already kind of formulated a show that I wanted to do before we did the poll, because obviously we're the World Crypto Network, and even though our focus is cryptocurrency, I thought it would also be worthwhile to cover other encryption tools besides currency. So anyway, I'd already come up with the idea for the show before the poll, but then when encryption tools won, then that's when I came up with the idea for crypto kitties, and I'm just gonna get it up right now. I have to switch. Oops.
So while you're doing that, so basically cats are the biggest mimetic vector on the internet right now. Okay, they transport information. They're carriers of information. They're almost like the internet's immune system. And as we said before, memes don't have to be truthful, but they do have to be useful. They do have to provide some utility. So what Charlene has been working on tirelessly, I've been watching her. We live together here in England, and she's been working on these really cool graphics. I think Tom's got some suggestions of his own by the looks of it with cats. And the aim of this is to really kind of popularize, and even, in a kind of, how would you say it, self-reflect, like in an ironic way. Like, we get that the whole cat thing is a little bit hipsterish, but we don't care. We're doing it anyway because we acknowledge that this is what helps spread messages. So give us a sneak preview, Charlene, if you would, of the work that you've been doing.
Yeah. So this is the graphic that I made for the show. As I said, it's called Crypto Kitties, and the how I came up with that name is because obviously I wanted to incorporate cat pictures, because that like a lot of people spend a lot of their time on the internet just looking at pictures and videos of cats. So I thought it would be an attention grabber, but then it's also a play on the word kits, like crypto kits, like a toolbox. So I thought it would be cool to name it that, because it's like using cats, but then creating, you know, your own crypto kit of encryption tools that you should use. Let's see. Oops. Yes. Where did my slides go? Just made the slides disappear.
I like what Tom's got on his screen. Cats. We've got to get cats engaging more with crypto.
These cats are so cute.
So yeah.
It's the cute factor.
So, and for when I start, I'm not going to do a show right now, but this is just what the introduction is going to be. So I'm going to be doing the show from the persona of a cat, and going to be incorporating cat pictures and cat references just to make it fun. And obviously when I do the show, I'm not going to be talking about those tools like they're, you know, NSA proof, quote. Because there's no such thing as perfect security, because every tool has a bug, and there's always going to be some way to, you know.
Yeah, every day is 0 day.
But these, yeah, so these tools are talking about the most secure ones that I know of, or at least the ones that are. It's a balance between usability and security, because there are tools out there that are way more secure than the ones I'll be recommending, but the majority of people will not be able to use them because they're very complicated. So I'm going to be trying to bridge that gap. So yeah.
Great. Have you got any other slides? Any teasers? Any little teasers you can give us?
Oh, what can you see on the screen? Because I just did.
We can just see the title at the moment, the first slide. You go to the next one.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I have to bring up this, because I was trying to make it bigger. This thing.
No worries. We can go to Tom's screen. He's showing lots of cat memes. So you know. Okay, you got it. Great.
Oh, I do have it now?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we can see it. Okay, so go talk us through it if you would.
Okay.
Just briefly.
So this was supposed to be when I was saying earlier I had this up, but I'm going to be doing the show from the persona of a cat using cat references. So as resident cipher cats at the World Crypto Network, my feline friends and I are here to teach you about all the latest encryption tools so that you may assemble a crypto kit which fits your needs. These tools will help you secure your catnip, stop dogs, aka NSA, from reading your private messages or paw them into history. Remember, there is no such thing as perfect security, as no house is mouse-proof, no tool is bug-free. I'm not sure, because I can't change the slide.
So guys, you need to send us your feedback on what Charlene is working on. She's working very hard on these graphics, as you can see. But we want to know what you think. You know, help shape that show format. You know, is it? Are we going too far with the cats and the meowsages, or is that kind of cool? Is that funny? Also, you know the way memes work on the internet. I saw a really good meme the other day, which had a scene from Jurassic Park where, you know, that guy was training the raptors, and he was like, you know, really standoffish. And it's like, this is how libertarians explain taxation to status. You know, like, okay, everyone just hold up. And he's like talking to these raptors, right? So I really like the way it's called textualism, isn't it? In media studies, textualism is where you take something that is well known, like Star Wars or some other cultural item, and you reappropriate it, and you start to put on top. It's almost like Banksy style. You start to impose your own messages on top of that. So actually, the way I see this show shaping up is that you at home would actually start building some of these memes, so that as early adopters of this technology, we become the influencers for all the fellow citizens and fellow human beings out there that we want to try and help by giving them access to this kind of technology, so that they're not at the mercy of these oppressive governments and these spy agencies. It's like activism, like grassroots activism. Yeah, closing in on the tax dodgers. That's right.
Yeah. So I just want to jump in.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those people that really needs a better guide on how to like encrypt all my stuff, and I know I try to. I would love to look at that slideshow. I know there are other things online, like people have put together like entire guidelines on how to create your own privacy. The problem that I have found personally is that all this shit is so inconvenient, like so inconvenient. It's like people always made fun. It's like, oh, well, why don't you just not use Facebook? But yeah, but then you're not going to know when anyone's birthday is. You're not going to know, where your friends are doing when you get together. So it's really hard to opt out of these systems. And I used to try to use Tor whenever I could, but it's unreasonably slow. I found Tor to be unreasonably slow to the point where it's not usable. So I always found a lot of these encryption tools are difficult to use. So instead, what I do is my online identity is different than my real life identity. I think that kind of helps a little bit. I also try to use foreign apps. For example, I really like using WeChat, and I really like using Telegram. And the reason I like using those apps for communication, even though I understand that they're not perfectly secure and they're not perfectly encrypted, and the Chinese government probably has a line into WeChat, and I don't know if anyone has a line into Telegram unless you specifically use the encrypted messaging of Telegram, but that's only one-on-one. It
remember,
doesn't help.
Telegram uses their own encryption scheme, so no one knows anything about it. So it
but
could be really
here's
strong or really weak.
But here's what I like about it, right? Unlike what's the US competitor?
I think Signal uses actual tested encryption. I think Signal.
I know, but I don't know anyone that uses Signal, right? And that's the problem. Like
everyone that I know uses Signal.
Well, no one that I know uses Signal, right? So and even though me and you run in the same circles, I've had like one person in my entire life ask me if I'm on Signal, and I said no, right? Usually I need more than one person to wanting me to download an app for me to use it. What's the US one? Oh, WhatsApp. WhatsApp is very popular. So WhatsApp supposedly has this end-to-end encryption. My problem with WhatsApp is that it's a US company, now owned by Facebook, and I just don't trust Facebook. So I would rather use the Chinese app with the Chinese watching everything I say, because I'm not a threat to the Chinese government at all. And the reason why I'm saying this is I'm not like a danger threat. I don't think any of this has to do with terrorism. I think it all has to do with this poster, which is in the UK, by the way. That's out of your hometown, Chris, right there. I don't know if you've seen these on the streets, but I've seen them on the internet of people seeing them on the streets in the UK. And all of the spying, it only has to do with one thing. It has to do with money. It has to do with taxes. That's the only thing it matters. And this is why I'm a big fan of using communication devices from countries that are hostile in a way, not like military hostile, but somewhat hostile to your country, because you know that there's no way the US will have a backdoor into the Chinese app WeChat. That's just not going to happen. Just like the Chinese will not have a backdoor into WhatsApp. So this is why I really trust apps of countries you may not necessarily like, but that also kind of prevents you. And also, I just saw that same, we're tracking you for your taxes is apparently showing up on ATM machines when you're trying to withdraw money. So And people need to realize that I don't want to say, like, I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but this is just like obvious to me. All of this spying, and this is historically, I mean, this isn't new. This is how it's always been for ages. Eventually the government starts running out of money and they come up with more and more interesting ways to make money. I mean, California is now giving out speeding tickets to bicycles, for God's sakes, right? So they really will go to any extent to get money, and in order to do it, they have to start spying. And that's why Bitcoin is going to be a big problem for them. It's the tax issue. It's nothing else other than the tax issue.
Well, we've seen that with Coinbase recently, right? Being petitioned by the IRS.
And I've been talking about this for years. I just went back to the very first article I ever wrote on my blog, or even the first. I think the first. I started my blog in March of 2014, I want to say. I can go back right now and double check. The first 2 articles I ever wrote on my blog, before I even wrote for Cointelegraph, were about the IRS issue, because it was the IRS statement that finally got me into creating content. So I've been talking about this from day one. The IRS might have been what pushed me into this, into being a content creator. So I go a long way in trying to explain this to people and why you need privacy. And to me, the most simple thing to do is to just try to use as many applications that your country just has no control over.
Yeah, absolutely. Janine, what have you got up on your screen there? The threat model. Surveillance, self-defense. I think the point is, yes, so Signal is open source. Just found the actual Whisper Systems website. I can show you right now. This is the Open Whisper Systems that Signal is based on. I know a lot of people, maybe it's a European thing, I'm not sure, but one of the cool things about it is when you meet somebody face to face, like at a conference or whatever, you can do a little handshake with the app on both your phones. So their phone will put up, their public key will come up in the form of a QR code. You open up the app, you scan that QR code, and then you can send a message to each other to confirm that you are the owners of those 2 public keys, which I think is great. And the Whisper Systems is also on GitHub, Whisper Systems /Signal iOS. So it is all there, and that's kind of why I like that, just sort of playing into the theme of, Telegram and WhatsApp. I also know that, refugee camps and stuff, a lot of people are using WhatsApp to stay in touch with people at home, using it as a potential back channel. But as you say, a lot of it is closed source, and it's now owned by Facebook, which is an American company. So it is kind of vulnerable to that attack vector. A couple of corrections just from earlier. Mr. Hoddle got in touch with me to say that it's the Shinebeck's Android wallets and green address that allow you to route your transactions via your own Fullnode and not Mycelium as yet. So that's cleared up that kind of a piece of information there if you wanted to be able to do that. And is there anything else that we want to discuss? I know that Julian Assange recently made a statement. Charlene, I don't know if you want to quickly talk about that before we wrap up for the end of the show. Or not. But basically, if you were, Janine and I went to the embassy the other day to see the Swedish prosecutor go in to interview Julian Assange, who stood outside for like the longest amount of time. And basically, we saw her go out for lunch and then go back again, but we didn't really get any kind of statement. But essentially, he has now given a statement. It's now available. And I believe that Janine has put up a document, which I will tweet out after the show and add to the comments section, which gives you the basic lowdown on what's been said. But it's starting to look like a lot of these allegations that he was facing were not as truthful as they were made out to be, and that has now come to the full light of day. So finally, just to say, yeah, it was sorry we couldn't get Alakanani on the show. I have been talking to her on Skype, but like I say, the internet connection is variable. I know that she often has difficulty, but big props out to Alakanani. She's worked so hard. She's persevered over many years. She's suffered a lot of personal setbacks. she's come through those onto the other side to finally start getting people together. I know, look, Africa right now is like a big topic. A lot of fintech people are talking about Africa, you know, like it's some big thing to take advantage of. I'm really on the side of the people. I'm really on the side of the individuals. What I don't want is for, you know, these corporates like, you know, Barclays to just wheel in their own versions of private blockchains and to say, you know, they can do finance for Africa. I want to make sure that in these places have full access to the real information that we can give them, not in a sense of like, you know, we're giving you the, you know, this sort of Western technology and you have to use it regardless, but really just to say, look, these are the discoveries that we've made. This is a global, you know, financial settlement system that has been discovered and is being popularly used in Europe, North America, and China right now. What do you think of it? What do you make of it? If we give you something, do you use it? Do you like it? And so that really she can open this Satoshi Centre in Gaborone, the capital of Botswana, so that kids, young people, old people can come in and they can get a resource, they can get tutorials, they can do meetups and hackathons and actually start to use this software. I don't want this to be, I'm not going to be part of any kind of corporate kind of, you know, takeover. I don't want any like company coming in and saying, well, look, maybe we give you some money and you use our version of the app, and maybe our version of the app, you know, captures a lot of personal identifiable information. I don't want to touch any of that. I want this to be peer-to-peer, individuals helping other individuals throughout the world. I don't want to go through NGOs. I want it to be, you know, person to person in that sense. So Janine, are you back on voice? Anything you finally want to add?
Yeah, I'm back. For some reason, my microphone wasn't working. So the only thing I wanted to say to end, close out CryptoKitties was that, as Sean was saying, like maybe he has a different threat model than other people. So the tools that he would want to use would be different from what someone else would want to use, and that's why I want to focus on that. You know, I'm going to be talking about tools, but that you have to be responsible for building your own kit. Like, you don't have to use all of the tools that I recommend. You just pick and choose the ones that work best for you. And the reason for that is because you have to design your own, or you have to think about your own threat model. So the questions you have to ask yourself is, what do you want to protect? Who do you want to protect it from? How likely is it that you will need to protect it? How bad are the consequences if you fail to protect it? And then how much trouble are you willing to go through in order to prevent those consequences from happening? And then the only recommendation because you were talking about Telegram and WhatsApp, I can personally say that I would not recommend using either of those because they're not nearly as secure as Signal. And then a comment on Signal. If you're worried, I don't know exactly how much it affects the security of the app because I actually just found out about it recently, but you should know that Signal relies on Google services. They also, someone basically, they tried to make a federated version of Signal that I think it was, they wanted it to work because Signal only works on Android and iOS. And I think someone made one that worked with that it worked on the desktop or something. I don't remember exactly what the app was.
I think Signal's actually released a desktop client now. So there's a Chrome version.
Yeah, they have a desktop client. The problem is that they don't support, because the whole point of open source is that people should be able to, they should be able to reuse the code. And Signal are okay with that, but they're not okay with people using their services like to branch out so that the app works with other operating systems. That was the problem I heard recently, that someone made a federated version and then Signal basically blocked them from using the service on their servers, which effectively the app doesn't work anymore because, or it works, but it won't work with other Signal users. It basically made it into a separate service instead of, them supporting development. So.
Okay, so yeah, that brings us to the end of the show. I have one final thing just to mention briefly, which is that, as you may have heard from a couple of weeks back, I have been in talks with Bitfinex or iFinex Inc. About working with them and basically becoming a community liaison. Over the last few days, I've been in talks with the team. I've been sitting in on our team meetings, really just trying to shape the role and come to a meeting of minds with me and the Bit4Next team as to what this role will be. They wanted, different words came up like an auditor, an ombudsman, and eventually what we settled for was community liaison. And what that means is that I'm not going to be a regular kind of, spokesperson for Bit4Next. I'm not going to be a shill for Bit4Next. You must not consider my affiliation with that company as a reason to buy, as in please don't just trade on Bit4Next or put Bitcoins on Bit4Next just because you've been following me for a long time and you trust me. But what I am is a go-between between you can come to me with any questions or concerns about Bit4Next that you feel comfortable speaking to me about, that you want me to take to the board, that you want me to take to those weekly team meetings that we have. I have access to the full team. It's quite a small team. There's a number of them here in London whom I met on Saturday at the London Bitcoin meetup, and I can raise your concerns. All I ask of you is, please, first of all, in the initial weeks of this job, please go easy on me. This is a little bit intimidating. I've got to absorb a large amount of information. There are things that I can talk about. There are more things that I can't talk about for legal sensitivity reasons. And so as a journalist, I've got to exercise a new muscle in me, which is to not just say exactly what's on my mind right at that moment in time. I will have to consider my answers carefully. But what I want you to know is that I'm going to work hard for you. I'm going to give, the team at Bit4Next, a hard time. I'm going to be critical with them, and I'm going to be working for you. What I need from you is I need you to keep me honest, but I also, please resist the urge just to troll. If you have any kind of doubts as to the credibility of any of the people working at Bit4Next and maybe some conspiracy theories about it being an inside job, please make sure that there is some substance and some prima facie basic evidence to go with that claim. Don't just kind of yell it out, because if you just yell it out, I'm just going to ignore it. But if there is substance to the question, you are genuinely and sincerely have some concerns, you can bring those to me in a way that perhaps you may not have felt comfortable with going to Bit4Next. And hopefully the trust that I built with you guys over the years working in this community means that you can be a little bit more frank and open with me, and you can trust me to go represent you in those team meetings and talk those through. I do plan on bringing Phil Potter, who's the Chief Strategy Officer at Bit4Next, onto this show. We might do a little merge between the World Crypto Network and Whalepool, which is a chat room for traders that I'm a member of. And I'm going to bring on a critic, or at least a couple of critics, onto that show. Hopefully, and this is to be determined, by the way. Phil is yet to sign off on all of this. But what I would like is for Phil to come on and really talk the way he talks on Whalepool. A lot of the traders on Whalepool who were obviously distraught when the whole breach was going down and we weren't sure what was going to happen, and it was GOX 2.0 and all of these things. But when Phil eventually came back onto the channel after all that hard work that he had done, he was able to speak, very candidly to everybody. And I feel like right now, I was very critical and I was giving Zain a hard time whilst the breach was going on. I was persuaded independently, without any intervention from nobody kind of PM'd me and said, look, Chris, if I bung you some money, will you start promoting Bit4Next? I was more than satisfied with the way they responded to it. I felt like, oh my God, if this is another GOX thing and we don't get resolution for 2.5, 3 years, this is going to be a nightmare. But in fact, what they did is they issued these BFX tokens. They unlocked that cash flow for all the traders so they could start trading as soon as possible, get the money off the exchange if they wanted to. It really did give the traders the time value of money, which they wouldn't have got had they otherwise gone the GOX route of just shutting everything down. You don't see your money for however many years. So I came to the conclusion on my own when one of the members of Bit4Next heard me articulate that view in Whalepool. He reached out to me and said, look, I really like what you're saying. We really could do with somebody like you to help us with the communications, because at Bit4Next, they feel like, they don't really have those communication skills that they need to get their point across. I can help them do that at the same time as doing the same thing for you. So if you have concerns about it, you can bring those to me either on Twitter, on Reddit, on this channel, and I will go to the team in the weekly meetings and bring those up, and hopefully come back to you with an answer that isn't, we can't talk about that right now because of an ongoing investigation. I know how frustrating that can be. I will try to be as creative, and I will push, and I will give the team at Bitfinex a hard time to make sure that you get the answers you want. So please feel free to get in touch with me about that. Thoughts, comments from anybody on here?
No, just wish you the best. Good luck. Don't let the job burn you out if you do get a million questions. And also the people that may be contacting you, just want to add one more. I'm sure Bitfinex has like an entire department. If you as an individual are having problems, whether it's your login, whether it's some kind of inconsistency, whether it's some kind of a data bug, those are not the types of questions that Chris would be there for. So just a heads up, Chris, you didn't mention that part, but I know you're not
I'm not there for service. I'm not there for customer support. This isn't me replacing Zane. You know, Zane was very much like, but I think part of the problem there was that you know, because Zane was there during the hack and I wasn't, I think a fresh pair of eyes and fresh blood into the company can really bring an outsider's perspective. And also because I've signed the non-disclosure agreement, obviously this won't be an ombudsman role. I'm clearly part of the team at Bitfinex. I'm not going to be able to, you know, do any of the things that you're probably used to seeing me do in terms of exposing the things. I don't expect to find anything that needs exposing. Why? Well, because, you know, PGP's a smart guy. Why would he employ me if he thought I was going to find anything? So really, I'm just there to be that mediator and hopefully kind of, you know, find a middle ground and tell a story that's true for both sides. Because I think personally, I think that it's important that Bitfinex, you know, does grow as a business, because if they do, they will be able to make those traders whole again. It was a, you know, a 36% haircut. Everyone in the company took that haircut, as well as all the users as well. They lost a substantial amount of their net worth, you know, at the company. They used up, you know, an awful lot of their reserves, and so they've come back fighting. They're raising money right now as we speak. They're doing their very best to make everybody whole, and they're introducing features. They've introduced some new features today. You can check that out at block.bitfinex.com. But as I say, that will be as far as I go in terms of selling them or shilling them. I would just, all I'm keen to do is give PGP the opportunity for the defense. We've heard a lot from the prosecution, and yes, he's defended himself on Whalepool, but Whalepool is still in its infancy in terms of mass outreach. It's not like, you know, got however many followers. We've got 8,000 or something followers here. So, and plus the followers that Tom's got, that I've got. I really want to give Phil and the team at Bitfinex the chance to talk to the public and get their side of the story out. So that's kind of what I'm here to do, just really to be that conduit, that go-between. So brilliant, bring it on. Thank you very much for your support.
Definitely congratulations, Chris, on the job. It sounds very exciting. And just want to remind everyone today, we got the Bitcoin group coming up at 3 o'clock on the West Coast, different times wherever you are. But check it out, same channel here on the World Crypto Network.
Yeah, now it's also looking like me and Thomas are the only two that are left unemployed, right? Everybody else seems to have a job.
We seem to have a shocking amount of free time. Yeah, we're both going to be there.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks very much for joining us. This show was dedicated to Alakanani, aka @Bitcoin Lady on Twitter. You can follow her and her successes in Botswana on Twitter, and we will desperately try to get her back on the show in the future. For now, that's all from me and us at the World Crypto Network, and we will see you later on for the Bitcoin group. Bye-bye.